When a man speaks, you close your ears and you do not listen. I saw how much I was abandoning myself, how much I was neglecting tender, sacred parts of me. I deserve the love, the highest love, the luxurious love. If you are in that place, it means you are addicted. Why is your ass on fire? Stop. But when I would listen deeper, it was so obvious. I decided to break up with him. It was very difficult. Your feminine, wild heart that actually makes you visible. Welcome to Boundless Love podcast. I'm your host, Sofia Sundari. And Boundless Love podcast is my invitation for you to step on the path of orgasmic totality. It's the path inspired by ancient spiritual path of Tantra. And on this path, for a modern, powerful, ambitious person, the one who wants to experience their potential in relationships, in sacred sexuality, in their true purpose, in their true power, I find that this path is perfect for you in this new season of this podcast, where I've completely changed the setting of how I am presenting it to you. In this episode, we are specifically focusing on the wild feminine heart. And I want to share with you a story of my life, a story about me, myself being the victim at times, me being the hero, me also being the villain, me being the one who has confused me, the one who was confused, and all these aspects that I'm about to share with you, they were all me. And I know that every single woman will be able to relate, if not to everything, then to parts of this story. And it's been really quite fascinating that in the last weeks, the last months, I've been talking to so many women who've been through almost the identical situations, identical stories. And so for me, with my upbringing, I was brought up in Russia, and with everything that I absorbed from that culture, it was so much about find yourself in a good relationship, get married as soon as possible, become a mother as soon as possible. If you're not a mother by 25, then there must be something wrong with you. And if you're single at any point of your life, there definitely is some kind of problem with you. And so I had this mindset, and I was trying to fit into that mindset. And whenever we try to fit into certain mindsets that are imposed by society, we tend to lose ourselves. And I certainly did lose a part of me in that pursuit. And so when I met a man who were to become my husband, I was so fixated on that notion. I need to get married. I need to have this framework in my life. I need to have this set up of a relationship and a marriage. And so all I could think of was that. Yes, we were developing the relationship, but in the back of my mind, there was always this thought of like, okay, how do I make it work? How do I bring it to this marriage point? How do I make him fully choose me? And in the first year of our relationship, he was just not doing that. He was a free spirit. He was the one interested in exploring polyamory and non-monogamous relationships and all sorts of things. And that was so devastating to me. And interestingly, that through that process, there was the burning in my ego, my identity, that I was the one that, like, who decided, okay, I'm going to make it work. And that was just not happening. And that was creating so much fire in my ego that through that fire, there were cracks in the whole personal setup and the whole personal identity. I was experiencing those cracks. So it felt like heartbreak. I felt like I was heartbroken over and over and over again when I was not getting what I wanted, when I was not getting the attention I wanted, when I was not getting the presence I wanted, when I was not getting the commitment I wanted. I was always feeling like my heart was breaking. But in fact, it was just cracks that were creating in my personal identity. And so then, in the end of that year, coincidentally, we also both were working with the great goddess Kali during that time. And the goddess Kali in Tantra is seen as that force of transformation. When you invite her in your life, she is the one who blesses you with really, really rapid growth. And so, in the end of that year, and in the end of that commitment, tapas, it's called, tapas to work with Kali, I find myself in a very transformational environment. We already lived in a tantric environment, in a yogic school, and were really devoted to our spiritual path. But in the end of that year, I ended up in a very, very powerful container. I was doing very, very intense inner work. And as I was doing this inner work, I started to realize that what am I doing? I am with this man who is not fully choosing me, who is kind of there, but not fully. And what I want is relationship that is certain, that is stable. And I decided to break up. I met also someone who was a catalyst to support me to break up. And I broke free. And I broke up and I was like, okay, I'm going to stop walking on these eggshells. I'm going to stop trying to mold this man and this relationship into something that I wanted it to be. I decided to just get out of that. And I decided to stop being this version of me that is just always trying to fit, to please him, to be that ideal woman that he wants, that he would choose, because he just was not choosing me. And so when that break happened, and I realized like, okay, yeah, there were the twofold lessons there. One part of the lesson was that, okay, I was so attached to that idea. I was grasping onto it so hard, and that had to burn, because that's not who I am. That's a limitation, to believe into something and to like hold on to it with such a tight grip, even if you desire something. And so many people right now are really tuning into how to manifest your desires. But if you're holding on to something for dear life and you're holding it with such a tight grip, it's your ego. It's not coming from a place of transparency. It's not coming from a place of availability to life. It's coming from a place, I must have that at any cost. And the fixation on exactly how that desire is supposed to come through. Because that was the thing that I saw. Okay, this man has to become the one who really chooses me. He has to fit into my idea of the ideal husband, and then we will get married. And that's not how it was meant to happen. And so that's what was one part of the lesson. The second part of the lesson, though, was that at the very same time, there was this paradox. And in my work, I talk a lot about paradoxes. In order for us to go higher in our states of consciousness, we have to understand that there is paradox within everything. And so the paradox in that situation was that my other lesson was that of self-worth, of that I deserve to have what I want. I deserve the love, the highest love, the luxurious love, the love that in which I am basked and bathed and completely held in. I deserve that. Every woman deserves that. Everyone deserves that. You deserve that. If you're finding yourself in a situation where you're like, you keep questioning if you're worthy of that, if you can have that. And you're settling for breadcrumbs, which I see so many women do. They're settling for breadcrumbs. They're settling for just words. They're settling for just promises. And in that, forgetting the self-worth. So this is a very important part of the journey, to reclaim the self-worth. And that's what happened to me there. I turned inwards. I forgot about the guy. I turned inwards. And I really saw, I am worthy of that. And by the way, immediately manifested someone who, after like 3 days of knowing me, was already ready to propose and introduce me to his family and make babies with me and all of that. And I was like, whoa, this is fast. And so then I broke up with my partner at the time, and I started to behave very differently. I stopped walking on eggshells. I stopped looking for his validation and his approval. I become really wild. I really connect to this wild feminine heart. And I start to be flirtatious and funny and a little bit less careful, a bit free in how I am, in how I speak, and how I behave, even in how I move my body. When we try to fit into something and we're holding this version of reality that we want so desperately in this tight grip, it's like we put ourselves in a cage. And when we liberate the wild feminine heart, it's like a dance. It's like you become more spontaneous. You become more inspired, and therefore you become more inspiring. And that, of course, was such a turn on for him. I became such an exciting woman for him. He could not stop thinking of me. He was asking me to come back together. And eventually we did, because we took some space. I remembered myself. He also saw me, my true self, not the one who was trying to be for him, but he saw my true self. And then he actually decided to commit to me. And there's another part of that story, that there was this 1 week when both men proposed to me. It's pretty crazy. So the desire to get married was real, but the pathway, how I thought it was going to manifest, was not. And so that was a powerful story. And then we lived together and created a lot together. And then we broke up because I saw that there was a spiral that I went through. And this is also really important in our women's journey, to understand that actually you will likely find yourself spiraling through similar, and actually the same, if I'm honest, themes in your life. And so I saw that I went another spiral, and I again went into a certain constriction, and I recognized that, and I had to break free. I saw that I could not express my heart in a new level of its wildness, in a way of my desire to create beauty in the world, to express my love for the divine in the world. This is what my work is. And I saw that in that relationship it was not possible. I was not able to come unleashed to the extent that I wanted to while I was in that relationship. And so I decided to break up with him. It was very difficult. There were people saying that I was completely crazy to do something like that. Even like dear friends, there were some really challenging moments when I found myself being cornered by dear friends who were saying, you are out of your mind, you are running away from difficulties, you are not honoring the beauty that you share, you have to make it work. And these voices were coming from so many directions to me. And when I was listening to the truth of myself, I knew that I have to go. I have to break free. I have to take this leap into the unknown. And even though like all the people who were expressing their judgment and asking me to think again and to not do something so stupid, all these people were just a manifestation of parts of me who were also scared and didn't know what's on the other side. This is a stable, good enough relationship. Where are you going, Sophia? Why is your ass on fire? Stop. But when I would listen deeper, it was so obvious. And the crazy thing happened that when we separated, my business just took off. Immediate, like 1 month later, literally. I created my first online course. It was called Yoni Yoga at the time. Now it's called Activated Woman. I then remade it. And this course just made my business explode very, very quickly. And then my online presence started to have a very new level of vibrancy, something that I needed to shake up those structures in my life to come forward and be seen in that wildness, because it's your wildness, your feminine wild heart, that actually makes you visible. And it makes you visible in your business, in your creations, in your purpose, in the same way as it makes you visible to men and to your successful, happy love life. You have to be you. That's the point. You have to be you. If you're trying to be someone else, if you're trying to be how your mama taught you, if you're trying to be this one who can be in this relationship and fit into it, you will feel so unhappy. You will feel so unfulfilled. The only way to fulfillment is this wild, alive heart. And so then I want to take you on another spiral with me. When I'm finding myself in another relationship years later, again, a very deep relationship, long-term relationship, and this relationship feels like a breath of fresh air because this relationship feels so safe and so stable and so comfortable and so harmonious. So there was so much beauty in that harmony, in that safety. And at the same time, with that safety, with that harmony, with that predictability, I started to again fit into the woman that I thought I had to be in a relationship. I kind of entered into this wife identity. This is something I see in a lot of women. We kind of adopt this wifey identity where you completely close off to other men, you completely close off to your radiance, actually, to just healthy communication with the world, and you really focus on this relationship and on trying to make it work. Interestingly, in that relationship, we kept questioning it. Like every 6 months, we would question it. We would go into like, okay, is this working or not? And usually he would be the one initiating the questioning. And I would be the one, no, we need to make it work. Okay, this thing is not quite working. Okay, our sex life is not quite vibrant, even though I am the sex queen. I am here being humbled that my sex life is not quite working. But we're gonna make it work. I was saying, it's just our egos that are resisting something magnificent. Oh my gosh, don't we do crazy things to ourselves when we kind of convince ourselves into something? And I was convincing myself for a long time that I have to stay and that I have to find my way in here. And we both were fighters and we were both fighting for this relationship. But then when there came another cycle of this questioning, I realized that I was just really holding on. And it was also really important for me to be shaken up. And I got shaken up by a few events. There was one event when I was assaulted and attacked with a gun on a beach in Costa Rica. That was one way how the universe was shaking me up. I started to go on ceremonies with medicines, and medicine also was shaking me up. And medicine was showing me, Sophia, you're holding on. See, whatever you were holding on to your life, it was not the thing. It was not right for you to hold on to it. Whatever you're holding on, whatever you're holding in that grip, that same very grip that I was talking about before, this is how it should be. This is how it should be. No, this is not how it's going to be. You have to release the grip. Whatever you release, whatever you let go of, is forever yours. And whatever you try to hold will never be yours. You will always lose what you're trying to hold. And so I saw that I have to release this grip. And we had to go through everything we had to go through. So much learning happened, so much acceptance, so much love. And at some point, I was mature enough to say, I released the grip. And we were both in that position. It was, for both of us, very obvious that it's time to stop fighting for it. It's time to release the grip. And when we released the grip and we let each other go, there was this very painful period when we still lived together in my apartment, and he was sorting out like where he would move out, and we were holding each other in each other's arms and crying because we loved each other, because we felt that we are losing also best friends, not only lovers, not only everything that this relationship was, but really losing this comfort and stability of being best friends. And at some point I found myself crying uncontrollably. It was just this sense of like I just spent more hours in the day crying than not crying. And then, of course, the world, because the world now witnesses me. It doesn't all happen just like me, my partner, and a few friends and a few people in the circle who know. It's like now so much of the world is actually watching this situation happening. And so many people have their opinions. And so many people say, well, but if you're crying so much, why are you separating? But the brain is a tricky thing. It's not always as it seems. Because this whole crying was a bit like kind of reactivation of a trauma. And there was a bit of a cognitive dissonance. It's like, okay, we decided to split, but yet we are still here together and we're still sleeping in the same bed and kind of being friends, but it's finished. So why are we still stretching this? And so I asked him to leave, and I said I really cannot do it. It's really messing with me. And then he left, and then I felt immediately this sense of expansion, this sense of like lightness, and then it became very, very challenging, because now who I became in that relationship was so solid. It seemed so solid. And now releasing that, there was just this suddenly all this space, suddenly all this unknown. And so, yes, it was clear to step out. And it was also clear that we were so scared to let each other go, because we knew that we're going to lose something important and we're going to lose a stability. But yet, in this spaciousness, it was like, wow, where do we fly from here? Because everything is possible. And that created a lot of deconstruction for me. I went through a very, really intense, challenging time of seeing that everything that I've built until then was built by a certain aspect of my identity that was no longer there. And so I was in this question, like, okay, where from here? And really not knowing where to find myself, because this structure of the relationship that held me for so many years was just no longer there. And then again, we can start to question and go like, well, but it was holding you. Why did you let it go? It's scary. Why? What's next? Did you make a mistake? The only thing I didn't question was whether I made a mistake. Because that was really clear that whatever I was trying to be in that relationship and all the effort I've put into trying to make it work was actually costing the life force of my wild feminine heart, of my true new level of becoming. And after that, I was dating. That's also very interesting. Whenever we exit relationships, we start to get triggered in very new ways, because relationship really provides this structure. It's like you know who you are in it. When you're out of it and you start dating again and you also live single, there's a whole other set of triggers that are coming at you. And I was getting so triggered and so purified, because that's what happened there. It's like with this expansion, you start to invite the purification, because when it's contracted, it's contracted. But when it's expanded, there's so much light, so much space. And so the purification is happening, and it was happening for me. And it was also manifested through different men who were coming in my life and helping me with this purification. And a very important thing that happened was, again, through a man who came as a messenger for me. He came and he completely shook me up. He embodied a lot of what I actually desire in a man, because that's also an important thing that took place, is that I understood that actually those men that I was holding on to, they were not the type of men that I actually truly desire to see as my life partner, as my long-term life partner. Their qualities are not that. And by the way, this is something that I will be teaching my students, to to understand your type of your wildness, of your wild heart, your natural expression in your true expanded state, and what is a matching energy for that. Because there are different types of people, and we can separate our energies in different types, and we can summarize it into 4 types. In Tantra, we really we work a lot with elements of nature: earth, water, fire, and air. And we can actually identify people as these elements. And there is a matching element, the one that amplifies your natural state. And this is your ideal match. And this is something that we will be discussing inside of Sanctuary, inside of the wild feminine heart cycle that is beginning really, really soon. So Sanctuary is my modern Tantra practice-based community where I am delivering practices to you every single week. And now we are entering into the cycle, and so we are opening the doors. Usually they're closed because we're doing the work on the inside. We are opening the doors, and we are having the 2 months, the entire cycle, dedicated to the wild feminine heart. And a part of that cycle is also understanding how you reveal yourself in relationships with men, and what kind of men really are a good match for you, to amplify your heart, not to repress you, but to really amplify you in the biggest way. And again, all these lessons, and I'm going to come to the final lesson also here, all these lessons are necessary. None of the things that happen in your life, even though you may be regretting and you may be looking back and like, did I miss my chance? But did I lose him? Did I not try enough? Did I not give my best to understand him, to help myself, to heal myself? Did I not do enough? If you're a conscious woman, you're likely having these thoughts. And I've been exactly there. And I know exactly how it feels to blame yourself, to judge yourself, to question yourself. And it's good to question yourself. And at the same time, when you become more detached and you release that grip, that tight grip of that's how things should be, you may realize that it's been your conditioning, and also very importantly, addiction. It's something that I want to talk about. Addiction that's been moving you into those relationships, into trying to make things work. Because that's how love, romance, and relationships addiction works. It's something that is not talked much about, but we actually are a society of addicts. And when we think about addiction, we think about maybe drug addiction or alcohol addiction and food addiction. But actually, other types of addiction are also real. And love, relationships, and sex addiction is a very, very significant thing that is like a disease of this age. And we don't understand. When you listen to the lyrics of the music, when you watch the movies, all the Hollywood movies about walking under the moon, when you look at the content of fairy tales that we are receiving ever since we were little children, you may realize that actually the society is holding this vision of a certain type of love, and it gives you this idea that you will only be good enough if you have that. And so then this grip starts to happen, and you grasp onto what is given to you, and you grasp and you try to make it work. But this is addiction. It's this feeling that I am not good enough without it. I am no one without it. Literally, in the society that I grew up in, there's a notion that you are nothing as a woman if you did not make a relationship work. So of course everyone is trying to make a relationship work. You don't want to be considered to be nothing, to be worthless. If your worth is defined whether you're in a relationship or not, and that's something we have to get really, really honest about. For those of you who've been single for a long time, how do you feel about it? Do you feel like this is there's something wrong about it, and you need to make it work, and you need to change that, and you're tired of being single, and you're waiting for the man to come into your life? If you are in that place, it means you are addicted. It means you are abandoning yourself to this contracted version of you. But your wild feminine heart is the one that is free, that is not bound by anything, that is expressive, that is orgasmic in its nature, that is connected naturally to all of life, that is expressive, that is not filtering herself, that is real, that is magnetic, that is truthful. That's who you are in truth. And you have your own version of that. My version of my wild feminine heart may be not your version of your wild feminine heart, but you have that. And I know you've been repressing it because I haven't met one woman who hasn't been repressing her wild feminine heart. Because there's such a depth to this heart. In this heart, you recognize all of life. You recognize that there's no one outside of you, that there's no pain outside of you, that everything is experienced within you, and your heart is massive, boundless, free. And so the final piece of the story was that I meet a man who embodies so much of what I want. And that's also been a tendency lately in my life, that when a man comes in my life, he immediately wants to claim me. And that is very powerful. That's exactly what I want. But I want this to happen from a specific type of man, from my life partner. But this quality is already manifesting in my life very actively. Men come and they want to marry me. They want to be life partners with me. And that kind of surprised me, because I was like, wow, this is new. That was not the case for me earlier in my life. Men coming with this claiming quality, it's powerful. I like that. And there was one man who came with that quality immediately. It's like he walked through my door because he was meant to bring something to my house. And he just immediately looks me in the eyes, holds my hands, and with his energy, I feel that he is all in. And he's choosing me, and he sees me as his woman and everything. I was like, whoa, where is this coming from? I didn't expect that. And then something very interesting started to happen. Well, first, that shook me up a little. And I was like, whoa, this is fast. Can it be that way? And then I started to relax into it, and I started to listen to what he was telling me. And he was telling me a lot of things. He was telling me all the things I wanted to hear, all the things every woman wants to hear. And I believed those things he was saying. And I was really taking it in. And then he could not show up for those things that he was saying. And so there's a big, big lesson in that, and something that I want all women to know and to remember. When a man speaks, you close your ears and you do not listen. What you do instead, you watch his actions. This is something I learned big time through that connection. And this man had avoidant attachment style and also narcissistic tendencies. I don't like to label people with these terms, but at the same time, there's such a fear of that in the modern world. So many women are saying that they were entangled with a narcissist and it really shook their self-esteem and it really devastated them and it really hurt them. What I want to say is that being in a relationship with a man with this avoidant tendencies, with narcissistic tendencies, was the best thing that happened in my life. It was the biggest blessing. He came as an angel. And at some point, this man just stopped contacting me at all. He just disappeared. He just vanished. It was like, did it happen? If I would really follow the addiction that I found myself, that I even discovered thanks to him, I discovered that I was addicted, because it's an addiction when you're so obsessed about someone who is not giving you anything, really. When you really are like building castles and fairy tales, and you already like feeling like, okay, how do we mold this into my ideal relationship? But the man is actually not available at all for that, even though he's saying he is, but he's not doing it. And when you are free from addiction and you rest in a place of tremendous knowing of who you are and your wild feminine heart, you don't fall for these things. And I saw that that took me into contraction again, because he was meeting all my needs through what he was saying. And I was in awe of all of that and abandoning myself through that. And, his avoidant attachment style showed me places where I've been avoiding in myself, where I did not tend to the vulnerability, to the pain, to the generational pain amongst all the women in my lineage who did not feel strong enough, worthy enough to be in a relationship that really, truly, deeply meets and honors them. They were not ready. They were not healed enough. I was not healed enough. And through that relationship that shook me up so hard, so intensely, I saw how much I was abandoning myself, how much I was neglecting tender, sacred parts of me, how much I've repressed the wild feminine heart, because the wild feminine heart is pure intuition. She knows. But when you get into that contraction of the societal expectations, what you absorbed, what you learned, what you've sucked in with your mother's milk, and you live in this addicted society, and you try to make things work, and you're losing that thread of honesty with your own self. Is this honoring me? Is this something I'm really available for? But how do I feel, really? Does this feel good? Does this feel right? Or am I running away from truth? Am I running away from love, trying to make this thing work, which is not love, it's an addiction? You're trying to make an addiction work. You think you fell in love, you're actually avoiding love. And when you're avoiding love, who is winning? Who are you serving when you're avoiding love? And so that was the greatest blessing. It was such a deep, deep healing process after that big breakup, after that understanding, like, wow, there's so much expansion, and allowing all these triggers to come to heal me more, to nurture me more, because that's what happens. These people seems like they manifest externally, but in fact, they are just representing me. And what I find now is that with the reclamation that took place, with the rebirth that took place, this deep, deep rebirth that really had to spiral. I had to, what happens when you have higher and higher states of consciousness, higher and higher levels of awareness in your life, you get stronger and stronger lessons. If in the beginning of the story, I was telling you I had to learn the lesson of understanding that I can have what I want, and that was a certain level of what I wanted. Then later in the story, I had to understand where I still settle for something that gives me stability and comfort, but it's not the thing, even though it seems like everything that the world wants, but it's not the thing. And then in another spiral of the story, it's like, okay, this is it's really close to what I want, but yet still there are holes. It's not it. It's not that. And so then I have to connect even to my generational pain, and to feel the generational pain, to connect to the immense hurt that took place there, that no one in my lineage dared to address and heal. And I am the one who has the consciousness, who has the tools, who has the heart, who has the power to meet those places that everyone was avoiding. It's my responsibility to show up for it. So when your consciousness grows, the lessons are stronger. The lessons are bigger. It's more complex what you have to deal with, but you are capable, you are able, you have this in you. And with all these spirals that we are going through in our lives as women, It's a reclamation, it's a rebirth, it's a becoming. You're becoming that woman who lives freely, who lives in expression of her heart. What started to happen for me in the end of all these initiations, because this is what they're initiations, and we get to meet them as heroes in our journey. And if whatever happens in your life, and if it's difficult, but you manage to learn the lesson, and you manage to not villainize someone else, but you learn to see the villain inside of you, and you learn to take responsibility, like, okay, this is a part of me that needed healing, that needed support, that needed the reclamation. If you manage to do that, you then go to the next level, you rise to the next floor in the building of your consciousness. And what I see happening now is the amount of support, the amount of joy, the amount of holding that men provide for me in my life now, and the caliber of men that show up. It's a completely different experience. It's a completely different story. It's a completely different permission inside of me. And I could not accept this level of masculine energy in my life if I did not go through these initiations. So all of that serves its purpose. All of that was grace. And if you recognize yourself in any part of this story, I celebrate you. I celebrate you for wanting to understand, for wanting to go deeper. I celebrate you for having this intuition that there is this wild heart of yours that is inviting you into more of you, not less, more of you, more blessing that your heart is. Because your heart, what is it really? What is this wild feminine heart? It's the goddess. It's the goddess who is shining bright for the highest good of all. And when you are repressing your heart, and when you're trying to confine yourself into those boxes, into those frames, even though the whole world may be wanting these frames, seemingly, because the whole world may be wanting this stable, good, healthy relationship where you're not hitting each other, you're not abusive to each other, seemingly, because abuse can happen on different levels. Even though you may be having all these right things, but you know your heart is constricted, you are clenched. It's not only disservice to you, to your path, to your supreme destiny, it's a disservice to humanity. Because every time a woman chooses to reclaim the wild feminine heart, she is serving the highest good of all in such a powerful way. She is serving the goddess, and we need the goddess to be remembered on our planet. And you are her conduit. So thank you so much for being here. I would love to know how these teachings are landing for you, what you are hearing, what are you recognizing yourself in. And I would love to invite you into Sanctuary. It's a very affordable, very easy way for us to work together. And I'd love to invite you into Sanctuary. It's my container, which is very affordable, which is very easy to interact with. It's not something that adds many more things for you to learn, to integrate, to process, but it's a very modern way to go deeper into you and to have practices that anchor you into what truly matters. And now this next cycle is dedicated to the wild feminine heart. So you'll be receiving practices every week from me and prompts that will help you anchor the practices deeper. And these practices will, first of all, really connect you to the feminine frequency, to your unique feminine frequency. You will understand the type of your wild. Then we will also go deeper into understanding the resourcefulness, how to be a resourced woman. And this resourcefulness is what makes you relaxed in your own skin and confident in who you are and valuing yourself in a true way. And then from there, we will go into relationships with men, because men are our perfect mirrors. I will teach you about the man vortex, a very important thing for every woman. I will teach you to understand how to interact with men in ways that are bringing the goddess from within you and for him and for all of life. Because men and women have certain roles that we agreed on when we decided to incarnate into these bodies. And you get to be the one who empowers the masculine, the feminine in your life and in the world. And then we will go deeper into understanding just this feminine dance, this feminine wild dance that dances through all of life in your highest expression. So there are those weekly practices that you're receiving. There is this continuous transmissions that you are basking in, that is inviting you to higher states of consciousness, to higher states of your femininity, higher states of your expression, your inner knowing of yourself. There's also a community of powerful women from all over the world who are committed to walking this path. You get to create small groups with women who will become your closest spiritual friends, and this is priceless. Then these women tend to meet all over the world in different places and send me pictures then of their meetings. This is so cool. And we also have an additional Q&A days that are taking place, and it's a really gorgeous place that will not add more to your busy schedule, and it's not something where you get like overloaded with the amount of information, but it's something that will give you quick, direct access to going higher into you through the practices that just last about 10-15 minutes, sometimes even less, that really to the point directly invite you into your depth. So through this process of sanctuary, through the process of this work, you become the woman you've always wanted to be. You go higher in your consciousness, your relationships change, you start to attract different caliber of people around you, your current existing relationships become more fulfilling, more powerful, you start to feel that you have more capacity inside of you to welcome joy, welcome abundance, welcome beauty in your life, and you become a changed woman. That's what they say. That's what they say on the inside. They change, they transform, and they become more true to their essence, which is impossible to miss in a crowd. When you are truly you, you are irresistible. Your presence is undeniable. And that's what happens to you when you commit to this work inside of Sanctuary. So we are opening the doors for a short period of time. You will find all the links below. You can step in right now, then the doors will close again for 2 months. But if this theme is resonating in you, step in. You will also have access to all the previous material, all the material inside of Sanctuary Vault, and you are really, really well supported. You have good material that will support you on the journey of your true liberation and expansion. So with this, we have come to the end of this episode. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you so much, and I cannot wait to see how our journey together will unfold.